It's the Ross Tucker Football Podcast.
Oh, yeah, it is. But it's not just any Ross Tucker Football Podcast. It is a Finish Strong Friday presented by DraftKings Sportsbook, America's #1 rated sportsbook app. What a weekend for the DraftKings app and the DraftKings Sportsbook app. I'll probably mention that again a little bit later. We had a very in-depth Super Bowl preview yesterday with Greg Cosell. I encourage you to check out. Later on in the show, I will, of course, give you my official Super Bowl 55 prediction. In between, though, I want to talk a little bit about the Hall of Fame class of 2021 because I feel like they always get short shrift because it's Super Bowl week. I mean, these guys are Hall of Famers. So we'll talk about that with my guy, Gary Myers. He is a Pro Football Hall of Fame voter, one of the best pro football writers out there. I've lost track of how many amazing books he's written. So we'll get to Gary momentarily. But first, a lot of you wait all week for this. It's a Winners Friday.
I want winners. I want people that want to win.
That's what we want. Brian and I love people that help us to try to grow the show, either by spreading the word via social media, like at Ohio Jags Buckeye fan. Don't even know your real name. I just saw you retweeted one of the shows this week at RossTuckerPod. You can also retweet me at RossTuckerNFL or like or Facebook love or Facebook share or Instagram, like whatever. You get the point, right? As long as I see any interaction, you're eligible to be the spread the word winner. Hit me up, Ohio Jags Buckeye fan, with an email, ross@rosstucker.com. The sponsor confirmation email winner, Bob Hammond, I think Hammond, Hamon. Bob took advantage of Manly Bands. Manly Bands, awesome wedding bands you can have if yours needs to be replaced or if you just want a second one. Either way, it works. And then we've got the YouTube shout out, Cisco Montano. I don't know if that's a real name or not. Supposedly a Canadian living in Japan. I don't care. You subscribe to the YouTube page, youtube.com/RossTuckerNFL, and you commented. So Cisco Montano, the Canadian living in Japan, you get a cameo style shout out for all of you. Send me that email, ross@rosstucker.com. Let me know what you'd like in terms of a signed picture, signed press pass, signed football card. I would like to talk with Gary Myers. It's Big Show time.
The Big Show.
All right, so he's been a Hall of Fame voter forever. He's been a Pro Football Hall of Fame caliber writer forever. I mean, what was your first year, Gary?
First year I covered the NFL, Ross, 1978.
My goodness.
I was covering the Giants for the Associated Press. I was living in New Jersey, and it got me started. I mean, at that point, I was covering for the Associated Press. I was covering the Giants, the Nets, the Cosmos. I was doing it all, and football was just the most fun to cover, as you know. It's just a great game. I really always liked the players, and it just kind of took off from there, where I've made a career and like a life out of this.
Yeah, you did. Gary, I was born in 79 and I will turn 42 next month. That is unbelievable. You've been covering the NFL for 42 years?
Well, how about this, Russ? Tom Brady was 4 years old when I covered my first Super Bowl, and now he's 43.
That is unbelievable. By the way, you can check out Gary on Twitter at Gary Myers, New York. We're going to get into, by the way, Tom Brady in a second because of your outstanding book, Brady versus Manning. So many awesome books, by the way. I've read a bunch of them. The Catch, Coaching Confidential, My First Coach, Brady versus Manning. How about them Cowboys? But I know you're in the New York area. You follow the Jets and Giants closely, Gary. I just want to ask you one question about each before we get to this other. Do you think the Giants are sold on Daniel Jones?
Not 100%. No, I think that he, it used to be that a quarterback had to make the jump from, say, the third year to the fourth year. But that whole equation has changed. And now I think the jump usually is first year to second year, and it didn't happen for Jones. So it has to happen second year going into third year, or I believe a year from now, the Giants will be looking for a new quarterback. But I just want to add, I've seen enough in spurts with him throwing the ball, with his decision-making, with his ability to run the ball, which is really a special quality, that if somehow he can put it together, I think he can be a playoff winning quarterback. But again, we've just kind of seen flashes of it for 2 years, and he's been hurt a bunch. This is a huge season in 2021 coming up for Daniel Jones. He's basically playing for his Giants career this year.
And then on the Jets side, do you think they'll trade for Deshaun Watson, Gary?
You know, obviously, Ross, it would depend on the asking price. We know it's going to be high, and depending on how much the Jets are willing to give up. They have 2 1s and 2 3s this year, in addition to their 2, and then they have 2 1s next year. But, you know, think about this. If they give up too much here and they bring in Deshaun Watson, then the Jets turn into what the Houston Texans were this past year, where Watson throws for 5,000 yards and they win 4 games. So the Jets are not a quarterback away from winning. If you bring Watson onto what the current Jets team is now, without all these draft choices they've accumulated, how many games are they going to win? I mean, unless they can get him for a 1 this year and a 1 next year, which is not going to happen. I mean, I've heard they won 3 or 4 1s plus Quinn and Williams. I mean, that's way, way too high. I don't think Watson is Patrick Mahomes. I just don't. And I would think that the better route for the Jets to go is to, if they love one of these quarterbacks at 2, take them there. Otherwise, I think the best thing to do is trade down, maximize the value of that number 2 pick, go 1 more year with Sam Darnold, and then make a decision on Sam after this year. I mean, Sam really had the disadvantage of playing for Adam Gase, who was a huge disappointment here, obviously, and not having enough skill position players. I'd like to see what he can do with good coaching and good players around him.
Let's get into Tom Brady before we get into the Hall of Fame stuff.
Okay.
Because I'm always fascinated by the Hall of Fame voting process. I know a lot of the listeners are as well. You wrote a book about Tom Brady versus Peyton Manning. You spent a bunch of time with Brady. I remember you telling me you were in the car with him for an hour. I guess I have 2 questions on Brady. The first one is, can you put into words what he's done, Gary, and how impressive this Super Bowl appearance is, to do it in a new conference, away from Belichick, 3 road games? I mean, you've been covering the NFL for 42 years. Like, just can you put it into words how much more this adds to his legacy, I guess?
Well, yeah, I mean, you can throw in there, off season with a new team, and how valuable that would have been. I mean, he held a couple of workouts at those high schools in Tampa, which he shouldn't have been doing, but I'm sure that was valuable to him, but nowhere near as much as mini camps, OTAs, that kind of stuff that would have given him more of an opportunity to get himself acclimated to his receivers. I think it's a tremendous accomplishment that to do it in the first year with a new team, and then to prove that, the Brady-Belichick argument has really heated up the last 2 weeks. I mean, it was going strong during the season as Tom was on his way to making the playoffs and Belichick was on his way to a 7-9 season. But now that Tom has gotten to a Super Bowl without Belichick, I think this tilts the argument, decidedly in Tom's favor. Ross, a lot of people have asked me, is this Brady's greatest accomplishment? And I still say 2001, when he took over for Bledsoe after Drew suffered that injury against the Jets late in the second game of the season, was pretty much a game manager the rest of the year. Nobody knew anything about Tom Brady would develop at that point. It was, he was a 6th-round draft choice. And so he was a game manager. They get to the Super Bowl, and they're now 2 minutes to go in a tie game, and John Madden is imploring Belichick to run out the clock and play for overtime. And Tom takes him down the field to get into position for Vinatieri's field goal to beat the Rams as a 14-point underdog. I still say that was his greatest accomplishment. I mean, the list goes on and on, coming back from 28-3 in the Super Bowl, obviously was huge. But I think I would put what he's done this season as number 2 behind what he did in 2001.
I think I agree with you, Gary. From doing the book on him and talking with him, do you have one story or one thing that jumped out to you from your time with him and the research you did into that book?
Wow. Off the field rather, I think what I found out, and I think it's become known now through his year in Tampa, but really, how beloved he is in the locker room and how he doesn't consider himself, better than anybody else. He just tries to be one of the guys. Now, I doubt he's this way now, but he was always known as an all-pro practical joker. And, and Matt Castle, who got into a practical joke war with him, learned, and he said, the lesson here, as he came out on the short end of it, was, never mess with anybody who's got more money than you. I think that's true. On the field, just his incredible dedication and commitment, which I think goes back to feeling slighted at the University of Michigan, where he had to sit for 3 years and then look over his shoulder at Drew Henson for 2 years. And so once he got the job in New England, Ross, he never wanted to give his backups any reps with the first team in practice because he truly was concerned. He always said to me, I don't want to give Belichick any chance to think somebody's better at doing this job than I am. So Castle had a fight for any first team rep what he'd get, even in training camp. And he's just incredibly competitive and dedicated to his team and to winning, that there's really no way to overstate it. I mean, that puts him on another level, just his ability to want to soak up all the knowledge that he can, his commitment to his teammates, and just his dedication to just everything it takes to be a quarterback in the league. Listen, he's got great ability, obviously, but I think it's the intangibles that's really made him different.
As far as the Hall of Fame's concerned, Gary, my understanding, there's 15 finalists. My understanding is there's one person that's picked to present all 15, and then there are discussions that are had, depending on who the candidate is, longer or shorter. And then there's a vote taken to get it down to 10, and then there's a vote from 10 to 5, and then there's sort of a yay or nay vote on that final 5. Is that correct?
That's right. The only thing I'll correct you on, when you say there's one person presents one candidate. It's not like one person presents all 15. So
That's what I meant. Yeah.
I knew that's what you meant, but I just wanted to clarify that. Yeah. So the difference this year is usually we hold it at the Super Bowl site the day before the game. So it would have been Saturday, this Saturday, under normal circumstances. Instead, we did it 2 weeks ago, Tuesday, and we did it on Zoom. And I was pleasantly surprised at how normal it felt compared to sitting in the room with the other 47 voters. I mean, it was very well run. Everybody had the same opportunity to speak up. And it was a very thorough process, as usual.
So as you're sitting here right now, you know who the guys are.
I have an idea who the guys are.
You know who the final 5 are that you had to say yay or nay on.
Usually we do, and I just want to see if I can explain this as easily as possible. In a normal year, as you mentioned, we vote from 15 to 10 down to 5, and then it's yes or no on the final 5. They're not competing against each other. You can vote for all 5 or any combination of the 5. This year, because there was such a long time between the vote and then the announcement at NFL Honors on Saturday night, the Hall of Fame did not want us knowing who the final 5 were. So without getting too specific, because it is somewhat complicated, we had our final vote. After we voted it down to 5, we actually went back and then they said, okay, make it seem as all the final 10 or each of them were in the final 5, and vote yes or no on them, even though 5 of them were kind of dummy votes because those 5 had already been eliminated. I don't know if I'm explaining this well.
I understand. They had to do a second vote, but if you guys are smart, you know that it's the people that got narrowed down to the final 5 that are probably.
Well, yeah, but the only thing was we didn't know who the final 5 were, right?
Oh, got
Because
it.
they hit it among the final 10. So just for example, I mean, everybody knows Peyton Manning's getting in. So Peyton Manning and 4 others were voted down to the final 5. But then instead of voting on those 5, they threw in the other 5 who were eliminated in the vote from 10 to 5, and they said,
and you didn't know who got down to the final 5. They never told you.
They knew, but we didn't.
Right.
So, right, okay. So I have a feeling based on how the conversations went, who the final 5 are, and obviously I know who I voted for, but I don't know the final outcome. And I would say, I mean, to be completely honest with you here, Ross, there were a lot of people, including myself, who gave the Hall of Fame some pushback here because clearly, and maybe with good reason, they didn't trust us that the results were not going to leak. And they wanted to be the ones to go out and I'm sure David Baker traveled around the country instead of knocking on doors at a hotel room like he usually does after we vote. He probably showed up at these guys' offices or, more likely their homes and tried to give them the same sense of surprise that he does in a hotel room. So they really wanted to keep it a secret so that the finalists or the 5 who got in didn't find out from us, but found out from David Baker. And they also wanted to keep it quiet from the public because they wanted to be a surprise on NFL honors. It was just for good reason. I mean, they were concerned about us keeping it a secret because, I mean, unfortunately, there are members of the committee. Usually we get done at 4:00 in the afternoon on a Saturday and they do NFL honors, at 7:30. And in those 3 hours, the names come out. So if it comes out in a 3-hour period, they certainly felt it was going to come out over the course of 17 days. It's just, it made us feel, at least it made me feel they didn't trust us. And they probably had good, now I never leak it. But clearly there are people who let it out and they wanted to avoid that. So I don't know. I can sit here and honestly tell you, I don't know.
Are you able to say, and I know that there's restrictions, are you able to say, number one, who there were long discussions about or short? And then number 2, are you able to tell me who you voted for? I know there's restrictions. I'm just asking. Those are the 2 things in my head. Like I wanted to ask you who were the longest discussions around or shortest. And then I wanted to ask you, you said you know who you voted for, but I know there's also restrictions. I'm not putting you in a bad spot. Just tell me whatever the answer is.
I will be completely forthcoming with you about my vote. I don't care. I know the baseball writers, tweet their votes. So I believe in complete transparency. I can tell you the shortest discussion, which tied for the shortest of all time because there was no discussion at all, was Peyton Manning. The Mike Chappell in Indianapolis always presents the Colts finalists, and he basically stood up, said Peyton Manning, and sat down, and we went on to the next candidate. If anybody wanted to talk about Peyton, they certainly had that opportunity. But, stuff like that happened with Jerry Rice and, and others, I'm sure, over the years. So there was Peyton was the shortest. I'm going to look at my list. I'm just going to look off camera here for a second to refresh my memory. I mean, there were long conversations, as usual, about Tony Biselli because of the shortness of his career and how he was a dominant player for the years that he had played. He was probably, if not the best left tackle, then one of the 2 or 3 best. And you'd know more than I would because such a connoisseur of great offensive line play. But I mean, Tony Biselli was among the best who ever played the game. And the reason he's not in the Hall of Fame as of yet, and maybe he will be on Saturday, is because his career was so short. Through no fault of his own, he just got hurt. And it was kind of a Terrell Davis situation. The comparison was made. TD, what he had going for him was 2 Super Bowl championships and a Super Bowl MVP. There were those long conversations about Clay Matthews, as in his 20th and final year as a finalist. There was a lot of conversation about him. Why did it take him so long to become a finalist? And I can't say whether he was earlier in his career, or in his eligibility, but in the 10 or 12 years I've been on the committee, that was the first time we've discussed him. So most of the conversation goes at least 20 minutes on each candidate, pretty much no matter who you are, excluding rather Peyton Manning. The ones that we really get into it, like the TO discussions a few years ago, 3 years in a row, each of those went about an hour. And we get situations like that where you have a candidate that there's a lot of conversation on. As far as my final five, I don't have a problem telling you this, and anybody I didn't vote for, I apologize. It doesn't mean I don't think that you're a Hall of Famer. I really believe that anybody who makes it to the final 15, Ross, will eventually get in. That's kind of been the history of it. The numbers bear that out. So any of the 10 who did not get in this year, I'm fairly certain at some point you will, and you just have to wait your turn. That's how it goes. But my final five were Peyton, obviously, Alan Faneca, Richard Seymour, John Lynch, and Charles Woodson. So the obvious omission here for me was somebody like Calvin Johnson, who is a first timer. His numbers were spectacular, but Ross, maybe if you were a voter, you would have felt differently because everybody has their own opinion. I just felt there were guys who were waiting a while, like an Alan Faneca, who was a tremendous player, that I just didn't think that Calvin Johnson, for example, deserved to jump the line ahead of Alan Faneca. He, to me, was not a no-brainer first-time Hall of Famer, although I absolutely believe he's a Hall of Famer. And I don't put a lot of weight on the first time, second time. It's basically I try to pick the five guys who I think are the most deserving that year.
Gary, you're the man. Really appreciate you sharing that with us. Again, highly encourage everybody to check out Gary on social media at Gary Myers, New York. And then all of his books are so awesome. If you go to his Twitter, you can see the picture of all the books he's written. It's really cool. You'll enjoy all of them. I don't read very many books, but Gary always sends me his when he writes one. So I always end up in the summer while I'm at the beach reading a Gary Myers book. It's unbelievable.
I want to say this first. You like free books and the halftime food at games. And if I just want to correct you on one thing. The Twitter is Gary Myers NY. It's not New York spelled out.
I'm sorry. At Gary Myers NY. I just keep when I see NY, I think New York.
Of course.
At Gary Myers NY. At Gary Myers NY. Thank you, Gary.
Thanks a lot, Ross. I appreciate you having me on.
There he is, Gary Myers. That was awesome to hear the behind the scenes stuff. There was no conversation for Peyton Manning, and I appreciate him going ahead and letting us know exactly who he voted for the Hall of Fame, even though I think he should have voted for Tony Biselli. I'll save that for another day. How about this, by the way? In every relationship, there's a short-lived list of forgivable offenses. Missing the most romantic day of the year, it's not one of them. Can't blow this, fellas. Cannot blow this. 100 Flowers is the easiest and best Valentine's Day gift there. I have it on my phone. I do it while I'm working out sometimes. I have it on my laptop. I've got my login already there. And boom, I just plug in 100flowers.com. I go to the radio icon. I put in the code football, and then I order flowers. There's great deals at 100flowers.com. Do it now. Get it out of the way before this weekend. Look, you're successful. You listen to this show. Don't be the type of person that procrastinates and then you're scrambling next week. Just do it now. To order last-minute Valentine's bouquets, go to 100flowers.com, click the radio icon, enter code football. Valentine's Day is Sunday, so order today and save at 100flowers.com, code football.
Tuck's Takes.
Morning, Ross. Couple of quick news items today. The Eagles are reportedly getting trade calls on quarterback Carson Wentz, and according to Mike Garofalo and Ian Rappaport, they haven't hung up the phone.
Right. And I thought it was interesting. Former Eagles president Joe Banner tweeted, at this point, it should be obvious Wentz isn't going to be in Philadelphia. You know, when this stuff starts to get leaked like this and the Eagles aren't, quote unquote, hanging up the phone, it does usually trend that way. I'm not saying it's 100%, but it's certainly between these reports and the Joe Banner tweet, it's looking less and less likely that Carson Wentz will be with the Eagles next season.
Tuck's Takes.
Some other news, including quarterbacks, will be Nathan Peterman re-signing with the Raiders, and ESPN analyst Teddy Bruschi saying that Matthew Stafford wasn't tough enough to sign with the New England Patriots.
I think the Raiders, they like having three quarterbacks they like. They still have Carr and Mariota under contract. I guess there's some chance that they trade one of them, and they want to make sure they had a backup they like, and evidently they like Peterman. As for the Bruschi thing, he's clearly not talking about physical toughness because Matthew Stafford is physically tough as nails. I think Teddy said something about, he can't take hard coaching. I guess I just don't know who Teddy would have gotten that from if he didn't get it from Matt Patricia. I don't know. I feel like he wouldn't be saying that if Matthew Stafford had said, I would be traded to the New England Patriots. I would accept a trade there. And if the Patriots traded for him, I feel like Teddy wouldn't be saying that. So I don't know. I don't put a whole lot of stock in that. That sounds like Teddy's not real happy that Stafford had no interest in the Patriots.
Tuck's Takes.
All right, here we go. Last game of the year. Your breakdown, your score, your prediction for Super Bowl 55. Kansas City Chiefs, Tampa Bay Bucks.
And again, if you're into the prop bets, Joe Dolan and I went through all the different skill guys on the Fantasy Feast this week. And obviously on the Even Money podcast, Steve Fezzik and I made our bets there. So if you're into either one of those things, the prop bets or the actual bets on the game, check out those shows. I will tell you that the point spread at DraftKings is currently the Chiefs are favored by 3 points. And the total is 56 points. So on the Even Money podcast earlier in the week, when I got it at 56.5, I got the extra half point there. I guess that means they think the score will be what? Let me try to do the math here real quick. It's like they think the score will be basically 30 to 27. Basically 30 to 27 Chiefs, 29.5 to 26.5 Chiefs. And honestly, that's not that far off of where I think it's going. I think the line at DraftKings is pretty good. I personally think it's a little bit lower scoring than that. I think that, look, I believe if they both play about the same, I think the Chiefs are the better team, right? So, Brian, if they both play an A game, if they both play their A game, I think the Chiefs win. If they both play their B plus game or B minus game, I think the Chiefs win. I think the Bucks have to play better than the Chiefs. I think the Bucks have to play like an A game and hope that the Chiefs play a B or a C game, which is certainly possible. The matchup that the Bucks absolutely, unequivocally have to win is their D-line against the Chiefs' offensive line. I think I talked about this earlier in the week, but I'm going to reiterate it because this is my area of expertise, right? The Chiefs essentially got worse at 3 spots. No Eric Fisher means you move your right tackle, Mike Remmers, to left tackle. You move your right guard, Andrew Wiley, to right tackle, and you bring in Stefan Wisniewski at right guard. So they just got worse at 3 spots. 3 spots. The flip side to that is they're also not used to playing next to each other. Now, I know they've got 2 weeks of practice, and they'll go over all the stunts and all the blitzes, and they'll communicate, but it's not like actual live reps next to each other over the course of a season and training camp. Nick Allegretti, the left guard, he's not used to playing with Mike Remmers at left tackle. Austin Ryder's not used to playing with Wisniewski next to him. Wisniewski's not used to playing with Andrew Wiley. So there is some opportunity there for some mental errors, some miscommunication on behalf of the Chiefs offensive line, and really just an excellent Bucks D line. Shaq Barrett and JPB combined for 5 sacks against Aaron Rodgers and the Packers. Going to have to be similar. Vita Vea and Ndamukong Suh up the middle, going to have to be similar. I also think, look, the Bucks beat the Packers, and Brady threw 3 picks in the second half, 2 of which were really bad. I don't envision that happening again. I don't think Brady's going to be out there throwing picks. So I do think we're in for a great game. I think it's going to be a 1-score game. I think it can go either way. I am so pumped up about it. I will tell you, if you're into this thing at all, the DraftKings Sportsbook app or regular app, if you put $50 on there to be a touchdown in the game, you'll double your money. There's going to be a touchdown in the game. And then everyone can do the prediction challenge. It's not even like betting on the DraftKings app or the DraftKings Sportsbook app. Just do the prediction challenge. You get an instant prize between $3 to $25,000. And that goes until the fourth quarter starts. You can do it while you're watching the game on the DraftKings app or the DraftKings Sportsbook app. Either way, just use the promo code Ross, which is awesome. Ultimately, Bri, I am going to go and I'm going to say Chiefs 27, Bucks 24. I'm not going to predict that the Bucks necessarily play better than the Chiefs. Won't be surprised at all, not even a little bit. But I will say Chiefs 27, Bucks 24. I don't think it's quite as high scoring as the betting lines like DraftKings think. I think we're in for a dandy of a game. Enjoy it. We will be back early Monday morning to break it all down. I should mention tonight I'm on CBS Sports Network. I think around here, channel 854 from 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern time. Got to get a haircut this morning. I shaved a little bit so you can see your boy with a suit on tonight from 7 to 9 or DVR it. And then Sunday, I'm actually going to be on the DraftKings live stream from 5 to 6 p.m. breaking down their preview of the game. So I think that's like Twitch or YouTube or whatever. As always, whether it's CBS Sports Network or Twitch or YouTube, the DraftKings thing, you guys take a picture, screenshot it of watching me on TV or watching me on Twitch or whatever, and send it to me in a tweet. I will retweet it. I love that. I love when you guys get a chance to check me out on the old TV or Twitch or your iPad or however you're going to watch me on the DraftKings thing, 5 to 6 on Sunday. Anyway, shout outs, Pizza Boy Brewing, Sporticulture, SteakhouseSports.com, Vision Comics with an X, and of course, DinerDepot.com. Love our I Think We're Done Here patrons. Remember, we're never done here. I'll be back Monday morning. We will be 3 times a week in the off season, maybe even increase that, depending on how you guys enjoy it, how many people are listening and watching, maybe even increase that. We'll see what happens. Definitely we'll have a weekly Even Money, Fantasy Feast, College Draft, and of course, Andrew Brandt's Business of Sports. So at a minimum, 7 podcasts for you guys every week. I think we're done here. Enjoy the Super Bowl, everybody.
Thanks for listening to the Ross Tucker Football Podcast. Make sure to also subscribe to the Fantasy Feast, Even Money, Business of Sports, and College Draft. All available at Apple Podcasts, RossTucker.com, or wherever podcasts can be found.